Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action, and I wanted to just get nice and uncomfortably close here to Manfred to admire his beautiful, bald head as he quickly disappears there. I'm playing the vampire counts, which I don't often do because they're kind of overpowered and boring in my opinion, but we'll talk about that more in a little bit. We do have Manfred on horseback here with a retinue of Blood Knights and the Varix Reavers. I'm personally a big fan of these guys. I don't see a ton of other people using them, but then again, I just don't see a ton of people playing vampire counts these days. I think most people are bored of them. Anyway, we've got some Fell Bats here. Let's see, yeah. In terms of other units, Dire Pack. For the main line, it's just zombies, Graveguard, the Sternsman. We do have two corpse cards, one with the Unholy Lodestone. The other one is just the 250-point regular corpse card, purely as a distraction piece to give my opponent something to shoot at that's not particularly important. I mean, granted, the Vigor Mortis buff is nice, but it's kind of just a regenerating meat bag, to be honest. I mean, it does have its own innate generation, which does make it a pretty efficient meat bag for only 250, honestly. Having just an extra corpse cart laying around to give your opponent, you know, something to deal with. The Vigor Mortis buff, like I said, is nice, and it's a decent HP soak, if you will. But anyway, you can see I'm just kind of maneuvering the bats around, trying to distract Manfred and the knights hidden in the woods here, as my opponent does have a Luminarch currently opening up on said corpse carts and doing exactly what I want it to, which is going after the unimportant 250-point regular corpse cart. We've got a front line of flagellants here, second line of halberdiers with another flagellant, Boris leading the way with a light wizard, Demogryph knights with halberds in the back. And yeah, since my opponent's taking a nice defensive position here with his Luminarch, we're going to get moving. I really don't want him to blow up the Unholy Lodestone, so I am going to move in these bats somewhat sacrificially. I did have some chevrons on them just to give them a bit better melee defense and leadership, since their leadership is absolutely abysmal. Probably not going to do much, but some Blood Knights, cheeky charge on the front line. Before I could pull away, my opponent gets me with a net here. Very well played. And also hits these flagellants with Foz Protection, buffing their armor and melee defense significantly. Very nice play there. Demogryph Knight's going to follow up here on these Blood Knights and do a ton of damage here. Thankfully, vampire counts are very overpowered and forgiving, so I'm going to be able to pull my Blood Knights away from there and completely heal them, you know, with full models and everything. So that's nice. Manfred is taking shots from the Luminarch, which is not the best. But we can kind of move him back into these woods and hopefully hide him away. Boris could potentially be an issue, but you can see I'm just kind of keeping these Blood Knights around. Just kind of keeping my opponent honest here, trying to maybe get some of these units out of position. Open this Luminarch up for units to get in the back line. But just in general, we need to get this melee engagement underway. So the zombie's going to meet flagellants here in the middle. And the corpse card, of course, rolling in to do its very important buffing. The Unholy Lodestone managed to get in the front line without getting blown up, so that's a positive. But unfortunately for me, the balance of power is not looking great, as a number of important cav units are not doing amazing. These Blood Knights are crumbling, and the Varix Reavers here just got caught out. I do hit them with a Dance Macabre, but the Demogryph Knights and Boris together are going to be way too much. I mean, Varix Reavers don't even have anti-large. They do have regeneration. They're a decent cav unit overall, but they're really not meant for that sort of thing. Unfortunately, my Blood Knights have been netted and caught up by halberdiers, so I'm trying to extricate them. Manfred's netted and about to get blasted by a Luminarch, which is also just terrible. But yeah, we hit him with the self-heal, Invocation of Nehek, to sort of prepare for the inevitable. Oh man, it's painful. He's going to be okay though, and the Blood Knights managed to land home a charge against the Luminarch here to try and take it out. So this does do a ton of damage. Luminarchs only have 40 armor, so they really are quite squishy units. Granted, they are exceptionally powerful. You can see them just blowing up Manfred there. But yeah, things are really not looking great at this point. Boris, though, takes the bait and tries to go after this pointless corpse cart, which is actually not super pointless, buffing up these Graveguard and zombies right now, giving them that Vigor Mortis. Those Graveguard are basically untouched, which is pretty nice. Skeleton Spears over here, same thing. Demigryph Knights charging in here, and they're just going to get bogged down. That's kind of a useless place for them. Because those high-value units are out of position, that's going to give me an opportunity to potentially come back here. I'm pretty far behind on the balance of power, but like I said, vampire counts are OP and very forgiving, so I am able to heal these very expensive units. And again, the reason I say they're OP, and I've mentioned this before, but you can heal unit models of their elite units, and you know, outside of obviously Vampire Coast and a single ability for the Lizard, and there's no other faction that can do that. And so to have such easy access to it and such, you know, widespread access to just general healing makes Blood Knights, which are already one of the most powerful units in the game in terms of heavy cavalry, which is saying something, just exceptionally powerful. Now granted, you can get them just horribly killed, but at the same time, even if your micro is a bit sloppy, you can still keep them alive until the late game. Like, to be honest, my micro is pretty sloppy in this game, and these Blood Knights probably shouldn't still be alive, but yet we were able to pin Boris in there just now and do a ton of damage to him. And yeah, this Luminarch's back online, but a clean miss there between Manfred and the Corpse Cart. Not sure exactly who it was targeting, but the Varix Reavers had been netted there. Will they land home the charge? Looks like the Luminarch's going to try and pull away here. Boris comes in to try and bail him out, and this is going to be the deciding engagement. You can see we've managed to pull the balance of power back towards even a bit. Luminarch gets caught up by the Varix Reavers. Boris hits the ground, and here come the Blood Knights. You can see Manfred swings up and around, and he's going to go after the Luminarch specifically. Boris is trying to pull away here, but it's just not looking great for him. Granted, he is getting the Crush the Weak. I believe that's going off against some of these lower leadership units, but as their leadership starts to recover, that effect will dwindle, and Manfred finishes off the Luminarch there. So, sick of getting zapped. I mean, he's at his healing cap, so definitely had to expend quite a bit of Winds of Magic to sustain that damage, but we were able to sustain. And speaking of sustain, this Corpse Cart is just taking a beating by these flagellants. You can see this this haggard necromancer just whipping these poor zombies. Just come on, boys. We're getting whacked by naked dudes with cages on their heads. Let's get a move on. Trying to get him over here to buff up these Graveguard, and you can see I'm just collapsing with the Sternsman. I'm trying to just form kind of a death blob around the Corpse Cart to try and take as much advantage before it crumbles away. And also to get it healing these expensive cavalry as well. Manfred charges in. He's got the name of this Light Wizard here. He's going to specifically target him and also try and recharge some Winds of Magic with his sweet Sword of Unholy Power. Excellent item. Although it can be a bit risky to use, especially if Manfred's in a situation like this where he's taken a ton of damage and you really don't want to commit him to a fight. To be honest, I probably didn't get that much value from the Sword of Unholy Power in this particular battle, but it's still certainly a cool item and potentially very powerful, so I definitely recommend it. You can see here the Warrior Priest is pretty much the last one holding out. There are still these Demigryph Knights as well, but a Blood Knight's going to charge in here very decisively and specifically target the Demis. There are a lot of state troops in the way, but they're mostly routing at this point. There are a few flagellants, of course, fighting to the death. But at this point, even the Warrior Priest taking a fistful of sword, face full of sword rather, from Manfred. He's gonna flee the field, and that will pretty much leave just the flagellants to face their doom and inevitably be turned into zombies. So yeah, in case that's if you were curious, that's how zombies are made. You know, dead state troops and specifically flagellants that have fought to the death. They contribute greatly to the you know, the return of, I don't know. Anyway, very close battle, very fun battle. Well played to my opponent. Honestly thought he had me there for a minute, but just because the vampire counts have so much healing and because they're so forgiving in terms of keeping your expensive elite units alive, I was able to pull back with a win there. And, you know, what can be done to address the vampire counts? Because in my view, like, this is kind of a problem. I probably should have lost that battle, realistically. I mean, my micro was a bit sloppy, but I was good enough to save it. You know, I had enough presence of mind to get those expensive cav near specifically the Unholy Lodestone to get the healing, also to get the buffs. So if, you know, Boris dives down in that area, we're getting a little bit of combat stat buff going on as well. Yeah, I mean, anytime the Luminarch's on the field, it's a bit of a problem for the vampire counts, potentially. But we were able to get through this time. Yeah, just Blood Knights, 3 XP chevrons. I mean, surviving until the end. They're all 3 units of expensive cav here. Surviving until the end. Graveguard just mopping up kills here. I mean, to be honest, in my opponent's build, there wasn't a ton that could kill these Graveguard outside of, like, Boris. Maybe these Halberdiers with the Hammer of Sigmar might be able to do the trick, but just in general, I mean, Demigryph Knights really don't have the numbers to decisively beat down Graveguard. I mean, with support and in like a pitched engagement, maybe, but just in general, there wasn't a lot to counter the Graveguard here, so they did rack up a ton of kills. And yeah, fun battle. Like I said, I'm not crazy about playing the vampire counts, but it's fun to switch it up once in a while. Just in general, I think the biggest issue is crumbling. I think it needs to be more punishing somehow. The issue being that the crumbling damage isn't fast enough to overcome a lot of the healing effects that especially the vampire counts, because the vampire counts specifically have so many healing effects that are stackable. You know, you can potentially get a multitude of healing effects, right? You've got Invocation of Nehek. You've got, if you bring a Necromancer, either a Lord level Necromancer or a hero, you get this Master of the Dead as well. You've got the passive healing from Curse of Undeath. You've got Corpse Carts. A lot of units have innate regeneration abilities. A lot of characters have the Hunger, so they'll regenerate while they're in combat, in melee. All these regeneration abilities are stackable, right? Because they're all different effects. Oh, don't forget the Mortis engine as well. Everybody's favorite, just terrible monstrosity. So yeah, all these healing effects are stackable, and crumbling damage just doesn't, it's not even close to enough. You can out-heal crumbling easily with the vampire counts, easily. And it basically makes your entire army unbreakable. And like with that battle, even if you just play badly, like I will fully admit I played not amazingly in that game and I still won, mostly because I was able to save units that their leadership was broken, right? Any undead faction, those units would have been gone. The Demigryph Knights would have just annihilated them when they routed. So what I'm thinking then is, okay, if routing units are basically fair game, then crumbling units should basically be fair game as well. So I was thinking maybe you have a, like, significant, maybe, I've floated the idea of increasing the damage before, of crumbling, but I don't know if that's necessarily the solution, because it would unfairly punish, especially the Tomb Kings. They don't really have a ton of healing. Granted, they have their army ability healing, which also then gives them a free 900-point monstrous infantry, but that's an entirely different can of worms. I do think it would be harder on the other 2 undead factions than the vampire count specifically, because the vampire counts have so much healing. But what I think would be something that would reward, you know, tactical gameplay and smart decision making would be to give crumbling a significant debuff to combat stats, similar to how units who are exhausted in terms of their vigor, like, or I guess undead, what is it, binding? Or not binding, whatever it's called. I forget what it's called for undead. You know what I mean, though. How tired they are. If it's a similar in terms of, or even more impactful than that debuff, right? Then it means that if units are crumbling, yes, they're technically still fighting, but their combat stats mean that they are essentially useless and they're going to die very quickly unless you do something to save them, right? I think that's a better way of approaching it from a game design perspective. So, I don't know. Hopefully, this video reaches the right people. That's kind of my 2 cents on it. I don't know. I've had some other ideas. I've kind of played around with some other things. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What would you do to address crumbling, because for me, like Vampire Coast a little bit, because they still have access to lore of vampires, which I honestly wish they didn't give to them. I mean, they kind of had to, but it's just dumb. They don't have as much passive healing sources. Like, you don't have your Mortis engines, corpse carts, you know, not as many units have regeneration. You do have some units which have the hunger innately, but the hunger is melee conditional only. And, I mean, even the standard regeneration trait does carry the weakness to fire as well. But I don't think it's necessarily as big of an issue for the Vampire Coast. I do still think it's an issue for the Vampire Coast, and even for the Tomb Kings to an extent. Not as much, as, like I said. Their army-wide ability here, the Realm of Souls, is a pretty good amount of healing. It's not amazing, but the Free Shabti summon is really the powerful tool there. I've seen that turn games easily, and I've had it turn games against me. I've turned games against opponents with it. So yeah, it all just kind of depends with that. I like that ability more because it's a skill-based thing, and you don't really have. I mean, you have the passive from Lore of Nekara, which gives you a bit of healing map-wide, but you don't have a straight-up healing spell like you do with the Lore of Vampires, right? So Tomb Kings are the least of an issue, still a little bit of an issue. Vampire Coast, kind of in the middle. Vampire Counts are the biggest issue, though, because they have so much healing. So that's why you guys won't see me playing them a ton on the channel. I probably won't be showing a ton of games against them either, just because I'm not really happy with where they're at as a faction right now. Not to mention that they have like 3 times the Lord selection of any other faction, but that's kind of, again, a different topic. But I've tried to address crumbling here. Let me know your guys' thoughts. Sorry I've kind of rambled on a bit at the end here, but I had been wanting to have this discussion, and I figured this was a good replay to kind of showcase exactly what I'm talking about. So let me know your thoughts. Hopefully you enjoyed. Give it a like if you did. If you didn't, feel free to dislike as well. Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe if you want more daily battle reports, and we'll see you next time.